Welcome everyone to the April 2023 consulting webinar titled Spring Cleaning, Take those old templates to the dump. My name is Michael Mathis and I am the Solutions Director at CDI. If you need help during today's webinar, please post any questions in the questions box at any time. We will have staff monitoring questions, and we will also have time available at the end of our webinar to answer as many questions as we can. You can raise your hand at any time as an easy way to grab my attention if needed. And some tips for success during today's webinar. Make sure you take notes and screenshots. I find it helpful to notate how far in we are in the webinar to easily find it in the recording afterwards. Don't be afraid to ask questions. We love answering all of your questions, and we will have staff available to answer questions during and after today's webinar. Please complete the survey sent out after the webinar. We love to hear all feedback and ideas for future webinars. And please remember that this webinar will be recorded and available on the CDI YouTube channel within a few days of the webinar. Today's webinar is Spring Cleaning, Take those old templates to the dump. The intended audience for today's webinar are Laserfiche administrators and Laserfiche power users. And this webinar is applicable to both Laserfiche self-hosted and Laserfiche cloud environments. During the webinar today, I will be using the self-hosted workflow designer. However, the same functionality will be available in the cloud designer. During our webinar today, we will review some best practices for templates and fields. We will find and examine abandoned templates and fields in our repository. We will plan and migrate metadata to common templates and fields. Finally, we will remove our unused templates and fields. And at the end of our webinar, we will go through a live demonstration. To get started, the purpose of metadata in your Laserfiche repository is really to add information to your documents and folders. We are able to provide at-a-glance information while browsing our entries. In our screenshot here, we can see colors on the left-hand side corresponding to the template that's applied to the document. And we can also see the case ID template field in our search results or folder browser display. And those columns are customizable. We're able to provide searchable information with template fields to quickly find entries. We can quickly and easily search by the assigned template and any of the fields populated on those documents. For example, here we can search by case files and specify our case ID or court event ID if we know any of that information. And finally, we can provide additional information regarding the entry. So when we select that entry in our search results or in the folder browser, we're able to see all of the templates and fields assigned to those entries to quickly and easily see key information regarding what those documents are. Best practices for metadata. Keep it simple. The first best practice is to keep it simple. Use the minimum number of templates and fields while still maintaining the benefits. If you provide too many templates or too many fields, it makes it more difficult to determine which template or fields need to be applied at the time of document import or creation. And it also makes it more difficult to search for documents that you want if there are multiple templates that are used that are similar or duplicated. Clearly name your Laserfiche templates and fields so users are able to quickly and easily identify what that template is and what it's used for, and same with your fields. And finally, color code your templates to make it easy to quickly see which template is applied to documents or which template you are selecting in the metadata dropdown. Use lists and default values where it makes sense. Default values will save time while indexing entries. So for example, a document date field can default with today's date, and if users need to change that value, they can do so at that time. List values will provide values for users to select from to keep metadata uniform, and also to allow users to more quickly apply that metadata to the documents. Dynamic list values provide the list values from database lookups, and your dynamic template fields can load values depending on a parent field. So for example, we can select our document category, and our document type field would then change values depending on the category that is selected. Make sure you keep a written policy for your Laserfiche metadata. Document when and why to use specific templates and fields, when and why to populate fields, and in the documentation, assign responsibility. Whose responsibility is it to populate that information, as well as enforce quality control to ensure that everything is used appropriately? Lastly, perform regular metadata audits. Ensure that your policy is followed. Validate that your templates and fields are assigned correctly. Identify entries without templates. The information that we'll go through today is going to make it a lot easier to help monitor your metadata and perform these audits. One of the first things we'll want to do when planning our metadata cleanup is going to be finding those abandoned templates. So what are abandoned templates or fields? Any duplicated or redundant templates. So if you have a parenthesis 2 at the end, say you have a client files template and a client files parentheses 2 or parentheses 3, are those able to be combined? Do we have a client files and a client documents template? Are those the same thing? Should they be combined? Do we have any templates that are unused or underutilized? For example, the Laserfiche repository comes with a default template named General. A lot of times that template isn't used, however, it's not deleted. By having these unused or underutilized templates in your repository, it's going to make it much more difficult to search for the documents you're looking for and to determine what metadata should be applied to documents during the time of import. To find abandoned templates, we can use the search by template feature available in the Laserfiche web and desktop client. We can also search by specific fields to determine which fields are assigned to documents. My favorite way of determining which templates are used, which ones are not used, is by using the metadata report. By using this report, we're able to export the information for every entry in our repository, including what template is assigned, and any field values that are applied to the documents. Once we've reviewed our templates, we can then plan our metadata migration. Our first step is going to be planning our new templates and fields. What templates do we want to keep? What templates do we want to change? I find it to be easiest to use a metadata planning worksheet, such as the one in the screenshot here, to document all of the templates, fields, and what they will be used for. Once we know what our new metadata is going to be, we can then plan our migration. So in our conversion planning here, we're planning what our existing metadata is and how we're going to convert that over to our new metadata. By planning ahead of time, it makes the implementation much easier and allows you to perform quality checks on, say, sample sizes of documents, or having that historical information to go back to for your data governance. The final step of our metadata migration is going to be executing our migration. There are multiple ways to accomplish our metadata migration. Sometimes it's going to be easiest to use the Laserfiche client to reassign templates on the selected entries. Most times using Laserfiche workflow is going to be the easiest route to go to reassign all of that metadata and possibly perform some data migration as well. For example, pulling out the year from the document dates. During a metadata migration, there are many pitfalls to watch out for. The biggest of which is data loss. For self-hosted clients, make sure you make a backup of your Laserfiche SQL repository database to be able to roll back if anything happens, if there is any data loss. For Laserfiche Cloud clients, you're going to have to be a little more careful because you're not able to back up and restore to previous versions of your repository. Common causes of data loss during metadata migrations is going to be shortening fields. So if we take a text field and shorten the size of that field from 200 characters to 100 characters, we would lose anything after that 100 character limit. Changing field types can cause data loss. If we, for example, change from a date time field to a date field, we will lose that data for the time portion of that value. When merging template fields, there is the possibility of data loss if the fields that we are merging have values on the same document. And we will get into more details on this during the live demonstration. And finally, while deleting template fields. If you delete a template field, any data stored within that field will be lost. The Laserfiche Desktop Administration Console will provide warnings, more so than the Web Administration Console. But not all of these data loss pitfalls are going to have a warning in the web or desktop application. So please be sure to keep these potential data loss pitfalls in mind during your migration. External systems, such as workflows, quick field sessions, forms processes, or integrations, will use or can use templates and fields. If you do have workflows, quick field sessions, forms, processes, anything else that are using those fields, make sure you review those processes after the migration. The usage of templates or fields do not display in the metadata report generated, nor anywhere else in the Laserfiche client nor administration console. Now that we've covered information regarding our metadata migration, let's take a look at my demonstration repository and jump into our live demo. To get started, I have a repository that looks fairly clean. We have a handful of root level folders, most of and templates available. We can see that there are quite a few of them, many of which need to be cleaned up. To get started, I'm going to generate the metadata report from my repository. From the tasks menu, we'll select generate report. If you are in the Laserfiche web client, you can use your more actions menu and select generate report. From here, we'll make sure that we have our template name column selected, and we can uncheck all of our other columns. Under general columns, I am also going to return the entry type because I want to include that as part of my analysis. We'll make sure that our report type is set to Excel, and we include subfolders. And once we select OK, that will run through the entire repository and generate our report. If you have a large repository, this will take quite a bit of time. And I do have my report generated from earlier today. So here I'm going to open up my metadata report that's generated. And this will open up in Excel. This has the entry path, entry name, template name, and entry type for all of my entries in my repository. To make data easier to work with, I am going to select the entire table and format this as a table. Make sure you have the My Table Has Headers selected and click OK. And next, we'll add in a new sheet into our workbook. And this is where we will do the analysis of which templates are assigned and how many are assigned to each folder or entry. I'm going to copy the list of templates from my repository. And here I will paste that into my sheet 2. Here I want my total count. Folder count, I'm just going to call this folder, document, and record folder. And again, we'll select our data and format this as a table. Right, to perform our analysis on our total count for how many entries this is applied to, we will use the Excel COUNTIF function. So equals COUNTIF. This will be COUNTIF table 1. We're going to use the template name. column for our range. For the criteria, we want to use the template name column from our sheet. We'll close our parentheses and enter. Now we have our total count on how many entries this specific template is applied to. We can do the same for a folder using the countifs function. So here we'll paste in my formula. We are looking for our first criteria is going to be table 1 type equaling folder. And we want table 1 template name to equal our template name. And if I put in my function correctly, that will help. There we go. And I'm just going to copy and paste this formula for documents, as well as for record folders. Now we can see that we have our count for totals as well as per entry type. And this is going to help us while we perform our further investigation into our metadata and what we want to clean up. If we go to the Laserfiche administration console, we can see all of our templates listed here, as well as our template fields. The first thing we're going to want to do is to start planning our new metadata. We can see that we're using the HR employee files template, as well as the employee folder template. And we have really a scattered distribution across our different templates that could become our single new client files or client documents folder. Or I'm sorry, template. So using Microsoft Word, I have my planning worksheet already started. So here are the 2 templates that we are going to decide to keep out of all of the templates that we have. We are going to keep additional templates. However, that is too much for one webinar. So our templates we're going to keep are going to be our HR employee files template, as well as our client documents template. If we look at our employee files template and our client documents template, we can see we have some metadata fields that could be combined. They are fairly redundant. So for example, we have our HR category and document category, HR document type, HR date, document date. We could combine these fields into one. So in our planning, we will make sure that we change those field names to be the correct field name that we want after this migration. We will also make sure that these are list fields. And our list values are going to be dynamic. If we look at the external tables we have configured, or in Laserfiche Cloud, these would be lookup tables. We have our HR doc types and our client files doc types external tables created. And these are also pre-populated with the document categories and document types that we want to use in our metadata. So in our planning worksheet, under notes, we can put in HR doc types and our client file doc types, and we'll indicate that these are both dynamic as well. Once we complete our metadata planning and we determine the Laserfiche templates and fields that we are going to keep in our repository, we can then move down to the next page of my document, which is going to be our metadata conversion planning. In this portion of the document, we are going to be planning what our existing metadata is in our repository, as well as what we want that metadata to be after everything is converted. Remember, these documents are just samples. If you have additional information or additional details that you want to capture during these conversion processes, be sure to include that in your documentation. In this sample here, we're going to migrate our employee file metadata template to either the HR employee folder or HR employee files template. If we go back to our analysis, we can see that our employee file template is used between folders as well as documents. When we do our cleanup, we are going to want to make sure that we use the correct employee files or employee folder template. For employee files, we are going to be migrating the existing employee name field to HR employee name, department to HR department, position to HR position, and the remaining fields are going to remain unused. And we have our same mapping for our existing metadata below as well. We are also going to be converting our metadata for the client files and client files 2 templates over to client documents. So we have our field mapping available here as well. After we're done with our analysis and planning and preparation for our migration, we can begin the fun part of actually performing that migration. So to get started, we're going to go to our Laserfiche repository, and we're going to perform a search for everything with the client documents 2 templates. Since this template is identical to the client documents template that we want to use, and we don't have very many documents at all, we can highlight these documents, select our metadata button, and change all of these over at once. If there's a lot of documents, it's going to be much easier to use workflow. It won't tie up your machine while all of these documents are being processed. Here, since we only have 6 entries, it won't take long at all. So we will select OK, and that's going to migrate our template. Now that we've taken care of one template, we can go into our Laserfiche administration console. And we will remove our client documents template. We'll get a prompt to confirm that we want to delete this template, and we can select yes, and our template will be deleted. If we try to delete a template that is currently assigned to documents, we will get an error. This is the only time we will get an error during this process. This is the only operation that Laserfiche will strictly forbid, is deleting a template when it is already assigned to a document. If we go to our fields and try to delete, for example, our abstract field, we can do a search in Laserfiche and choose our abstract field. Here we'll enter an asterisk for our search term and run our search. We can see here, my test has our abstract field applied. If we delete our abstract field from the Laserfiche desktop client, it tells us deleting this field will lose all associated field data. It's currently assigned to 0 templates. Do you want to delete the field? We can say yes. That's the only warning we get. Laserfiche does not tell us if that field is assigned to any entries. And if we go back and look at our document, we lost that data. Be very careful before actually deleting any template fields. Our next step is going to be to merge our document category and our HR category fields into a single Laserfiche template field, because per our planning document, we have both of these as document category. So we can select category or document category as well as HR category. Right click. Under all tasks, we have the option for merge fields. When we merge our Laserfiche template fields, we can choose to redefine some of our properties. So for example, we can choose what name this merged field will have. So we'll choose document category. We can choose if multiple values will be allowed by this template field and whether or not it's required. And finally, we have our conflict resolution option. We can choose here to cancel the merge and display an error. So if any entries both have the same 2 fields or more fields that we're merging together applied to it, our field merge will be canceled and the administration console will display an error. Other options we have available are to use the field from a specific template field, or rather use the value from one of the fields we're merging. So we can say the document category field will take precedence, or HR category field will take precedence. If we allow multiple values in our template fields, we can then have another option for retaining all values. So all of the values in both fields will be combined into multiple values in that final merged field. I do not want multiple values in this field, and we're going to choose cancel merge and display error, because we should never have both of these fields on the same document. If we click OK, we get our error because the fields, one entry or more entries, have values for both fields. If we go back to Laserfiche, we can run a new search here. I'm going to close out of these search results and start a new search, not in the recycle bin. If we select field in our search options, we can then choose not all of our fields. We want our document category field and our HR category field. Select OK. We can put an asterisk for both of our fields, run our search, and that will show all of the documents with both of these field values applied. Here we can see this is just a test document, so we can remove our document category field and we'll keep our HR category. We'll select OK to save our changes. If we come back, we'll select OK on our error and try again. And now our fields have been merged. So here we have our document category field, and we have our HR category field gone. Let's take a look at our Laserfiche templates, and we are going to set up our dynamic fields for our two templates, client documents and employee files. And this will allow us to use the same fields with different list values for these documents, or for both templates rather. One step we need to do first is to merge our document type field and HR document type. Do not hold Shift, it will select everything. HR document type, holding Control, will select document type. All tasks, merge fields, document type, and OK. In a larger repository, this will take more time. However, I have a small repository for today's webinar, so everything will run much faster than it will in a real repository. Now that we have our fields merged, we can take a look at our HR employee files template. And here you see we have our document category and document type rather than the HR fields. Under dynamic fields, we are going to set these up to be dynamic. So we'll select our two fields. We want these to pull from HR doc types. Select the appropriate external column, so category to category. Select OK here because category is going to be the first field that will populate. Under document type, we'll select our doc type column. And here we want this to be filtered depending on the document category that's currently selected. We'll add that field and say OK. And we can preview our template. And now if we select our document category from the list, we can see that our document type is going to change based on our document category. If we update our client documents template, preview first, nothing up my sleeves. We can come to our dynamic fields, select our document category, document type, This is going to be client files. Use our columns category, no parent, document type, parent of category, and select OK. Now if we preview here, we can see our document category, even though we're using the same Laserfiche template field, our client documents template is going to display different values than our HR employee files template. Same fields, different drop-down values. So now that we've seen how to clean up some of our templates and some of our fields, the next item we'll go through is using Laserfiche workflow to process these documents. Using Laserfiche workflow is going to allow us a lot more functionality and flexibility while we are performing these metadata conversions. So to start, we are going to search for all of our entries with the client files or client files to templates. For each entry that we find, we're going to retrieve the existing field values from that entry. Next, we'll use the Assign Field Values activity and select the Laserfiche template that we want to assign. And finally, we'll map our field data from our previous field to our new field. If we take a look at tax year, we don't have a corresponding value for tax year on our previous metadata. The closest we have is our document date, so we can select our date field. And if we use our token dialog, we can then format this field to display only the year. We'll format our token to provide only the year. If we look at our results, we can see April 13th, 2022 converts to 2022. For a basic metadata migration, this is all there is just these few activities. We can list the entries in the workflow instance details. This will tell us in the workflow history which entries the workflow ran on, and that's always good information to have. We can publish our workflow and then run. We can see here our workflow completed successfully. If we look at our entries, we can see all of the documents that were impacted. And we can see we have our client documents template with our category, invoice, document type, and other information filled in. For our employee files, we have a more complicated situation. So here we're going to use branching to choose whether the entry is a folder or a document. And everything is going to remain more or less the same as what we had just seen in our previous workflow. So we can add all of our employee folder fields. And we will map from our previous field values to the new field values. Not all of the information that we are mapping is going to need to come from the search repository results or retrieve field value results. If we had some sort of unique identifier, or maybe some of our metadata is always in the document name, we could use other activities to query additional metadata. So for example, here we don't have a document category, so we could pull that from the document name if needed. But in this example, we can leave this one empty. We have our date hired. We'll use today's date. We'll populate our department, and description we will leave empty as well. Okay, and we'll publish our workflow. When we run this workflow, we are going to receive some errors. Uh-oh. We look at our messages tab, we can see one or more required fields were omitted or had a blank value. So here, document category and document type are required, so we will need to provide information for these fields. Since we don't have anything available, we can put in either conversion, or here maybe a better option would be miscellaneous. And we can then provide a separate document type, and these can then be cleaned up manually after the conversion, since we only have a handful of files. If there were thousands, we would want to look into more ways of automatically grabbing that information. However, since we only have a few, or we have no way of grabbing that information, we can provide default values. And I still didn't populate everything. Employee name is what I'm missing here. Finally, after we have our metadata cleaned up, we can then come back to Laserfiche and remove our no longer needed fields and metadata templates as needed. That's going to conclude the live demonstration for today's webinar. At this time, I will stay on to answer any questions that you may have. If you do have any questions, please post them in the questions area and go to webinar. And please remember, there are many resources available, such as Laserfiche Answers, the Laserfiche Solutions Exchange, the Laserfiche Support site, as well as the CDI YouTube channel. And you can always contact us at consulting, sales, or support at citiesdigital.com. Thank you for attending today's webinar. My name is Michael Mathis. I'm the Solutions Director at CDI, and I will take time to answer any questions that you may have. We have a question on how is the metadata report different from file download report. File download report is only going to give you the information displayed in your entry listing. So it's only going to provide you with this information rather than the additional information from the generate reports, including child entries. We have a question on what happens to the template change and if the lower metadata options are different. When we change templates and there are, for example, additional fields on documents or an additional field in the template we are moving away from, those template fields will stay on the document and they will be added as independent fields. So rather than showing up inside of our template, they show up down below. We have a question, can you retrieve metadata from the repository search rather than adding a separate activity? Yes, you can. Using the search repository activity, you could retrieve those fields from the fields area, and that will work exactly the same as retrieve field values. We have a question, can editing a template name cause damage? No, renaming a template will not cause any data loss within your repository. However, if you are using that template in forms, workflow, quick fields, etc., you will want to update those. I believe that is all the questions we have, with a couple of exceptions. One is to show the template report again. So in our Laserfiche desktop client, we can go under Tools, or I'm sorry, Tasks, and Generate Report. Select Metadata Report from our report type list, and select OK. If we are in the Laserfiche web client, we can access that through More Actions, Generate Report, and select Metadata Report. All right. I do not see any other questions coming in at this point. If you do have any other questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to CDI. We are always excited for any questions that come in. And also, please remember to fill out the survey that will be sent out shortly after today's webinar. Thank you again for taking the time to attend today, and enjoy the rest of your day.